Welcome, folks. Welcome, welcome. My name is Abigail Tucker, and I, first of all, have to clarify that I am definitely not the kind of person that has reserved tables. There's a ton of signs up here that say reserved. They're not reserved, so by all means, feel free to come on up. I hope to make our time together very engaging and interactive, and so with that, first things first, see something, say something. Raise your hands if you've seen this on a sign in an airport, if you've heard this on a PA system at a train station, bus stop. Yeah, so have I. See something, say something, though, is a false narrative. It leads us to believe that that's all we need to do to stop harm. And when you leave here today, folks, my hope, what I intend on, is that you'll know why see something, say something is not enough to prevent harm. You'll know what you can do about it and why it matters in community corrections. All right, so one other logistics piece that I think is important. I am much more of a small group person. When I do trainings and conferences, it's usually with about 25 people who are all together, up close and personal. I've modified today for a larger audience, but I'm going to adapt for just a larger room, because that's what we're looking at right here. But we've got some options for you to engage and elevate. There's two microphones, either or, on the end here, and I would love to have your voice elevate the content around active bystandership with what you are experts in, which is community corrections. If you're the kind of person who likes to take notes, I certainly would encourage that, but you don't have to. If you're interested in anything that's on the slide deck today, at the very end there'll be a QR code, and you can drop me your email. I'm happy to email you the whole deck, which includes all the hyperlinks, and this here is a hyperlink to email me directly. So feel free to just hang on to the end for that QR code and get that information. So, I mentioned that I am used to smaller groups. I'm also a little bit more used to, I'm used to my slides working when I click yes, but I'm also used to more one-on-one conversations. So I researched how best you present in a large room, a large capacity, and one of the things that it told me, AI told me that I should do, is establish credibility in the presenter. I certainly respect that and I understand it, but it is just not my style, folks. I would rather establish credibility in the content, which is that active bystandership can save lives. I'm actually standing in front of you with a little bit of discomfort because I like small groups, I like one-on-one conversations, but I've been pushed out of that discomfort for the last year or two because in learning about active bystandership, I find it important to share it in an industry where I've spent a fair amount of my career, in jails, probation, community corrections. But in the world of deepfake, I am Abigail Tucker, the person who was assigned to teach this today. I'm a psychologist in Denver, Colorado, and in order to calm my nerves to be with you all here today, I grounded myself in my why. That's always really important to me, as I'm sure it is to you all. And as a psychologist, my why is often grounded in people and relationships, and in those interpersonal moments where we can learn something powerful. I'd like to share with you a case example that came from a friend of mine who works in parole. I have their permission to share this example, but I've, of course, changed their names and not going to share the location for obvious reasons. But my example we're going to refer to as Carl's mistake. So Carl was a parole officer, but first he spent 10 years as a social worker. He loved doing social work. He was working with a criminal justice group, and a parole officer said, "You should check out this job." Sure enough, pay was almost double, and he landed it. He loved the new job. His social work skills gave him excellent advantage in connecting with clients, even with his coworkers. He was respected, well-liked, conscientious, and a really hard worker. And he felt like he was making a difference. He was also very quickly promoted. And Carl found out that this very small increase in pay as a supervisor came with a huge increase in expectations and workload. right? More meetings, policies, expectations, and he still had a very small caseload to manage. Carl was up for the challenge, though. He maintained his positive demeanor, can-do attitude. He even remembered flowers on Administrative Assistance Day for Nadra, the office manager. Fast forward to the end of a month, and everybody was back in the office a lot more, finished those end-of-month notes that they had to complete. And even though it was a lot of hard work, there was camaraderie in the office, being around each other. Everybody was usually in this office dispersed in the community, so it's nice to be around everybody. And it was in these first couple of days back in the office that Nadra noticed that Carl seemed tired, overwhelmed, fatigued. And it just wasn't like him, and so she said something to him about it very lightheartedly in front of Tay, a more seasoned parole agent, to which Tay immediately jumped on the chance to crack a joke and said that Carl was clearly becoming a supervisor because he was constantly fatigued and always tired. Carl just laughed it off and went back to work. But the next day, Tay noticed that Carl was more than just tired. He was jittery, anxious, distracted. And oddly enough, he noticed that Carl was going to the bathroom seemingly almost every hour. Tay started to wonder if something was seriously wrong. Later on that day, Tay walked into the copier room, and there was Carl's laptop, wide open, unlocked, with some case notes. Tay looked around, thought, it's a good thing no clients were back here, and moved on. The next day, last day of the month, and Carl ordered pizza for the office. Classic Carl, always pitching in for the team. And in a hurry, when he realized that the delivery was actually on time, he dashed out of his office to go pay, leaving a parolee right outside his office and unsupervised. And it took only a matter of seconds for that parole individual to go into his office, look at his case notes, and slip right back outside his office, unnoticed by Carl. The next day, everyone knew. The parolee got enough information and went straight to his victim's house. Thankfully, the victim's family were home, they called the police, and the parolee was taken into custody without incident. This is not a happy ending, though, folks. Carl was immediately put on leave. The department braced themselves for the liability and was already starting to endure a firestorm of bad press. Tay got into the office the next day. A new manager was sitting in Carl's office, and Tay inquired and got the nondescript, he's on leave. I am going to come back to Carl's story. I'd really like to get your all thoughts on this, but a quick raise of hands or just an internal reflection. How many of you have known somebody like Carl? A dedicated public servant, thank you, starts their career out full of vigor and hope, and makes a mistake that ends up being their worst day. Or maybe they made a series of mistakes. Maybe they even ended up getting involved in some misconduct. I'd like you to really take a moment, folks, and think about a personal example. This is a self-reflection where someone that you knew, you worked with, made a mistake, got involved in some misconduct, and it ended up badly. I'd like you to think about that example and reflect on, in your personal example, who was harmed? What was the harm? What do you still remember about that day, that time, that person? Did other people see the harm? Was it just you, or were there other people who either did or may have noticed what was going on? So with that personal reflection in mind, what I'd like to do is I'm going to offer two options here, folks. First, I'm going to actually suggest that people pair up. I know we have some disbursement, so maybe kind of connect with people who are close to you. And after the end of that, I would love, and these could be like dyads and triads. I'm already seeing people join, tell other people to come on over. I love that. After which, folks, if anybody has an example from your group that you'd like to share, we do have 2 microphones here, and feel free, would love to hear from you. But I want you to go back to Carl's story, and I'd like you to reflect briefly with somebody near you. Who was harmed in Carl's example? Who was harmed, or what was the harm? We'll give you just about 2 minutes, folks, and then would love to hear if anybody has anything they want to share. Thank you so much. Come on in, folks. Welcome. We're doing a quick activity, but you didn't miss anything. Come on in, and we'll get you caught up here in just about 1 minute. For anybody who's attending live stream, feel free to answer in the chat in Carl's story who you think was harmed or what was the harm. Give it about 10 to 15 more seconds, folks. Okay. Thank you all so much. I loved actually just observing people walking around, shaking hands, introducing themselves. Thank you for being so welcoming to your peers, which is fantastic. Saw some of that. If in your group you think you have a really good example of who or what was harmed, you're welcome to step up to a mic. We'd love to hear what you have to say. But one of the things that I actually overheard, I really promise I'm not trying to eavesdrop, but it is actually easier to hear your voices this way than the other way around. And I certainly heard, the victim. Do people identify that? The victim's family, Carl. I think I heard something about mental health, Carl's potentially, what's going on with Carl. But I also heard some concentric circles around the impact of the department, financial possibly. And I honestly think that I heard the word trust. Did the word trust come up in anybody's group? A couple of nodding heads. Trust in the system, trust in the criminal justice system. Okay. Yeah, I appreciate that. And one of the things about Carl's story that is unfortunate is while the case and the example and the specifics might be unique, the outcomes are not that unique. I'm sorry to tell you folks, but this slide behind me is not AI generated. Every single one of these things comes from headlines in the last 5 years. Headlines were in probation and parole, community corrections and corrections, that individuals, systems, families, and people have been harmed, including the people who work in this system. And so I ask you folks, since we know that the harm exists, it's pervasive, it's serious, why don't we intervene? Thinking about Carl's example, do we think that Tay and Nadra are just really horrible people who didn't care? No, not at all. I can assure you, not at all. In your own personal example, is it that you wanted something bad to happen to that other person? I'm assuredly not. My experience with working with folks in the criminal justice system is that most people are very well intended and have really high integrity and want to do well. And so when I pivot to the question, why don't we intervene? It's really tempting to want to start to blame. It's really tempting to want to blame Carl. Like, come on, Carl, you know better, right? It's really tempting to want to blame Tay. Dude, all you had to do, X, Y, Z, etc. Hindsight is always 20/20. It's also really tempting to start using the shame bucket, right? I personally am really good at getting down on myself for things that I think I shoulda, coulda, would have done better, including intervening when I knew there was harm. But folks, I've been checking out the sessions for your conference here this week, and I don't observe in my own experience that shame and blame have gotten the criminal justice system too far. So what makes how we treat each other any differently? I encourage you, I implore you not to get into a pointing fingers and us versus them when it comes to active bystandership. But what I encourage you to do is join me in learning more about active bystandership so that we can move from witnesses of harm to active bystanders. So let's get a quick definition of a bystander. A witness who is in a position to know that there is a need for positive action and is in a position to take some form of action. Now, I'm going to ask you a few times today to consider learning more about active bystandership after our time today. And this is my first time I want to do that. So if you've got something that you can write down with, or you just want to put it into your phone, jot down for me Dr. Irvin Staub, you see his name up here on the slide, and BBC. Just write down BBC, the news outlet, Dr. Irvin Staub. After today, go check out that article. Folks, you won't be disappointed. So Dr. Irvin Staub is a dear colleague and mentor. He has decades of research. He is a world-renowned researcher in active bystandership. I love his definition. I'd like you to actually, let's apply this definition to your personal example, the one I had you reflect on when we first started. Were you in a witness position? Did you know that something wasn't going well? Maybe you knew it in your gut, maybe you knew for sure. Were you in a position to know that positive action was needed? And stripping away any blame or shame, were you in a position to do something about that? So I want to take this a step further. There's actually two different kinds of bystandership. There's passive and active. Passive bystandership, folks, this is where not only do we not take action to stop harm, worse yet, folks, we unwittingly, unknowingly, most often communicate to others that it's okay, that the bad stuff happening, that there's no problem with it. Let's think about Carl's example. Do we think that Tay and Nadra were okay with his presentation, with the jitteriness and the anxiousness? No, they weren't okay with it. Do we think that Tay thought it was totally fine that he left his laptop unlocked in the coffee room? I can assure you he did not. But unknowingly and sometimes unwittingly, we communicate by our lack of action, by not saying anything, that what's happening is okay. This is dangerous, folks. On the flip side, active bystanders take action to stop the harm, to prevent it, to slow it down, and to communicate that it's not okay. I'm not going to tell you, folks, that it works 100% of the time. Things would be very different if I thought that was the case. But I have seen in correctional agencies, in police agencies, in criminal justice agencies, that learning about active bystandership and getting your workforce involved in that can reduce the harm. Now, I want to point to what's not here on this slide. In between the passive and active, there's no neutral. When it comes to active bystandership, there is no such thing as neutral. I want to throw out a quick phrase here, folks, and just raise your hands if you have ever heard this phrase, maybe used this phrase, above my pay grade. Okay, so a lot of hands go up. Yeah, I used to use that phrase, right? I still want to use that phrase sometimes. Here's the thing, sayings and phrases like that falsely communicate that there's a place of neutral. What we're saying is that by not taking action, right, we're staying neutral. It's not true. Those sayings are actually passive bystandership. Man, when I figured this out, folks, I probably looked like a contorted Jim Carrey the first time I tried to use that phrase after I learned about this. I was like, that's above my... God, I was so mad because I didn't want to be a passive bystander, but I had realized how much that saying was just indoctrined to how I was going about my workplace and how I was interacting with others. And I'm going to list off a couple of extras. If you have one in your office that I've not named, I'd love to hear it. Again, we got some microphones if you want to chime in. But how many of you have heard the phrase, I don't have a dog in this fight? Yeah. Not my business, not my problem? Yeah, a lot of nodding heads. The new one that took me a minute to get used to is stay in your lane, stay in my lane, stay in your lane, right? I did ask AI their thoughts about this one, and this one I thought was, I come from a family of sewers, and I've got some people who are fisher in my family, so I thought these two were quite entertaining. And if somebody has heard this phrase, I'm dying to hear it. Tend to your own knitting. That was one that I had not heard before. And not my can, not my worms. I had not heard of those before, but hey, thank you AI for a moment of levity on this. But here's the thing, folks. All of those phrases, again, falsely communicate that there is such a place as neutral. And so I know for me, it burst my bubble to know that I wasn't being neutral, that I was actually contributing to passive bystandership when I learned those. I'll use a phrase that I often hear from my daughter's friends when the teenagers are in my house, which is sorry, not sorry. So I'm sorry if it bursted your bubble. I know it bursted my bubble, but I'm not sorry because if this starts to shift something in how you approach neutrality, that's a win, right? Okay, so I asked a question a little bit around what makes it hard, and hopefully we're starting, or why people don't intervene. Hopefully we're starting now to understand that it's actually complicated. It's difficult to understand why people don't intervene, but there's some social psychology behind this, right? So at this moment, I'm gonna ask if my wonderful friend Mike could come on up here. My friend Mike is the director of Parole Board in Colorado. Is anybody else here from Colorado? Okay, thank you. Hi. All right. So thank you, friend. I love psychology. Obviously, I'm a psychologist. If you want to learn more about this, please contact me afterwards, beforehand. But this was incredibly invaluable for me to understand one reason why people, including myself, don't intervene when they see harm potentially occurring. So is anybody here from New York? Oh, all right. So this study actually comes from New York, from NYU. It does come from 1968, though, so a little bit of history. Darley and Latané are our researchers in this study. And what Darley and Latané told their NYU, or these young students, is that they wanted to study what it was like to be a student in a busy urban environment. Seems harmless enough, right? So I want you all to imagine that my friend Mike here is a young, eager graduate student at NYU. He wants that too, he says. All right, so thank you to Mike. So when Mike comes in, if I'm the experimenter, I want you to imagine that I get him into an office that's the very first door that's closest to you on the slide. And he gets in that room, he's all by himself, and as I'm leaving, I'm explaining to him the intercom system that's in front of him that will allow him to talk to his other peer students around what it's like to be a student in a busy urban environment, right? And I'll say, you know, you can't talk over anybody. I'm not gonna listen in because I want you to feel comfortable to speak freely. And oh, by the way, every 2 minutes it's gonna stop so that somebody else can talk. I don't want somebody rambling on and then the other students get a chance to talk. Okay, he's on his way. But I run this experiment 3 ways. And way 1 is I communicate to Mike that in the very next to him, which is there by my name tag and chair, you see that this is, and we'll imagine it's the second door there, that this second student, it's with him in every single experiment, right? So no matter what, that second student is always there. But then I'm also gonna run this 2 other ways. So the next way I'm gonna run it is I'm gonna tell Mike that it is him, it is this student, second student door right here that's always with him, and then in this next one there's gonna be a third student, right, who joins. Imagine it's that third door. And in the third and final way I run this experiment, I again tell Mike, who's a student, learning about what it's like to be a student in a busy urban environment. He's in his room. In the room next to him is this other student who's with him the whole time. And then in addition to this student, there's actually 3 others. So I want you to look at the picture and imagine we're wrapping around this hallway. And so as far as Mike is concerned now, in this last iteration, there's 6 total students, including him. But here's the gig, folks. Mike's the only student there. These are empty chairs for a reason. There are no actual students in any of these chairs or in there. They're all recordings, They're all pre-recordings designed to set up consistency in a social science experiment. But Mike doesn't know this. As far as he's concerned, these are all real people and other students. And this student, the one that's always with him no matter how I run this student in their intro will say, I have a history of seizures. And later on, as the students, which are all recordings because they're not real, and Mike, are starting to have a conversation, this student, again, pre-recording, will say, I kind of feel like I have a seizure coming on. They'll start to sputter their words, spur a little bit, and then all of a sudden you'll hear, and it will go silent. And at that moment in time, our researchers, Darlene and Latine, wanted to know two things. Number one, does Mike get up out of the office to go check on this student who's having a seizure? And number two, does it matter when we change the experiment to add other students? That's what they really wanted to know, right? A little trickery. They said, come on in, learn about this thing, but actually that's what they're really studying. So what I want to do to get you all engaged in this is that I'd like to do we're going to do a percentage game show here, okay, folks? So in our first round, where Mike believes it is just him and the student having the seizure, raise your hand if you think that at least 50% of the mics left their room to go check on the other student having a seizure. Believe in him, he says. Okay, that's most hands, not too surprising, little psychoanalysis on a criminal justice population. Okay, how about raise your hands if you think 60% of people left and to go check on the person having the seizure. It's just him, okay? Keep your hands up if you think 70%. See, people are not sure. 80%. 90%. Over 95%. Okay, these two people who have their hands raised up, these individuals still believe in humanity. We should all spend more time with them. They work in criminal justice and they still believe in humanity, right? And Mike really appreciates your faith in him too. So, all right, fantastic. All right, round two, folks. Now, same experiment, but we've led Mike to believe that there is a third student there, right? Now raise your hands if you think 50% of the mics left their room to go check on the student when they added another pretend student. Okay, hands are up. Keep them up if you think 60%, 70%, 80%. Okay, pretty sure that's it. Okay, oh, we have still some faith in humanity down here. All right, last time, folks, I'm gonna adjust because there were some big shifts in our hand raise there. Now this time, Mike believes that there's 4 other students. So it's him, the student having the seizure, and 4 other students. Raise your hand if you think 25% of the mics left their room to go check on the student having the seizure. Okay, got a base rate here of 25%. Keep your hands up if you think 30% left to go check on the students. 40%, 50%, okay, 60%. I like it, believers. Okay, first of all, can I get a round of applause for Mike? Just tell him thank you so much. I mean, isn't he so fantastic? Thank you so much. All right, I'm not gonna leave you hanging here, folks. So here were the actual results of the study. When it was just Mike and he believed that it was just him and the student having the seizure, 85% of these individuals left their room to go check on the student having the seizure. When we led them to believe there was somebody else in the hallway, 62%. And when they led them to believe that there were 4 other people who could hear this seizure, 31%. I want you to remember your guesses. Where do you think they lined up with that? Some of y'all are laughing. Don't be ashamed if you have faith in humanity. That's a good thing, right? Folks, I am actually a clinical psychologist, not a research psychologist, but I do remember this thing from that one stat class that I was required to take, and that is that difference between 85% and 31%, it's what we call statistically significant, AKA, that's a big deal. That is a major change in behavior. Nothing changed except the number of other people that student was led to believe were present. What's going on? What's happening here? Is it true what my husband says to our 14-year-old that she's really smart except when all her friends come around and then she has like a frontal lobotomy, right? See some nodding heads. She is a smart kid. She does make good decisions even in front of her friends. But it turns out what this social science experiment teaches us is that whether or not you're 14 years old or you're a graduate student at NYU or you're an adult, that we are less likely to take action to intervene when we believe that others are in a better position or will do so. And this, for me, it made sense, but I want to explain these next two concepts because this really helped me understand this and actually start making some changes in my own practice. Number one, diffusion of responsibility. Fancy schmancy way of saying someone else is gonna do it, right? I encourage you to work this word into some casual conversation, maybe tonight, next team meeting. Diffusion of responsibility. Everyday example, folks, this is why that moldy lunch stays in the office refrigerator for weeks. Someone else is gonna take care of that, right? All right, but this is different than pluralistic ignorance. In pluralistic ignorance, this is like the epitome of second-guessing yourself. It is believing that because nobody else is doing anything or is worried or is concerned, it must be okay. And I don't know about you all, but I fall prey to this one all the time. I perpetually think that the joke is on me, that maybe I'm wrong, maybe there's not really anything bad happening here. I'm worried that I'm gonna offend somebody, they're gonna accuse me of making a big deal, right? I'm gonna be overreacting, and so I stay silent. Let's go back to Carl's mistake, folks. Is it possible that Nadra, our office administrator, had maybe a little pluralistic ignorance going on? Like, I don't know, maybe there's really nothing going on. Carl is a supervisor, he's really stressed. Maybe it's not that big of a deal, right? Is it possible that Tay was experiencing diffusion of responsibility? Someone else will let him know this isn't okay. There's other people in this copy room and in this break room. This happens a fair amount, folks. But what I want to know, and so here's my question. If you're attending virtually, feel free to pop this into the chat. If you're in person, I'm going to encourage you to partner up, and I'm also going to encourage you to share at the mic. Because here's my question here, folks. Does this happen in community corrections? I see some nodding heads. In probation, parole, community corrections, corrections in general, does diffusion of responsibility and/or pluralistic ignorance happen where when we add more people to what's going on, others are less likely to take intervention to stop harm? So I want you to just take 2 minutes and share with others what those examples are. And if you think your partner has a great one, encourage them maybe to come up to the mic and share with the group. I'll give you 2 minutes, folks, and then I'll be back to check in. Don't have too much fun. All right. Thank you all for taking a moment to engage and connect with your peers on this. I heard some laughter, which is great. I heard some serious conversations, some good examples. I would love to hear your examples. Please feel free to come and find me afterwards. It's always helpful for me to continue to put it into context. But the reason that I want to take the time to have people reflect is that, remember how I called on earlier, avoid the risk of blaming and shaming? Avoid the risk of saying, Yeah, I hear you, Abigail, but that stuff doesn't happen around here. Everybody I know would absolutely step in and intervene if they saw something going on. It's important to remember the examples where when humans get together to do things called work, that they sometimes make mistakes and that they're not perfect. And this social science reminds us that sometimes just the additional add of having other people can have us not thinking our best selves or taking the action that we would normally take if we simply just reflected in retrospect about whether we should or should not. So I want to, we've covered that see something, say something is not enough, that when it comes to active bystandership, there is no such thing as neutral. We know now there's two phrases to what happens when we add others, that bystanders may be less likely to intervene. I want to bring to you one other example. There's actually tons. I'm happy to talk more if you're interested about it, but I want to bring you one other example of why we don't always intervene even when we see harm is occurring. And this one you all actually already know. I know that you know this deep down inside, but I want to connect it to something you already know about active bystanders, and that is that the work is hard. Your work is hard. Whether you're in probation, parole, case management, administration, community corrections, we know that this job takes a toll, physical health, emotional well-being. It's really hard work, folks. And that isn't even including all the other weights that you're carrying as a human walking this earth outside of work. Folks, in Carl's example, he wasn't just jittery and anxious. He was having the onset of diabetes, and he didn't know it. That frequent urination, feeling jittery, tired all the time, he did not know that that's what was happening, and it had a really serious impact on his health and his decision-making. I want to share with you a personal example as well. Many years ago, I was working in a community mental health center, and we were partnered with our probation and the court system, and we had a really cool program. It was a post-sentencing model it was like a mental health court, but it was post-sentencing model. So all mental health cases, really high acuity. We prided ourselves in taking the really tough cases. And because we were one-stop shopping, we had the probation officer embedded into our mental health clinic. Her office was 5 feet from mine. We had this very particularly tough case, really high mental health acute needs, psychosis, but also really high criminogenic factors, really high-risk cases, high legal supervision index, had previously had some threats to staff. And then on top of it, there was all these, I don't know if you all can relate to this, expectations of the court and of everybody else for how we managed this case, right? This case became the poster child for how we were going to do well with this case, and we weren't doing well. And this case took a toll on all of us, including the probation officer. I knew the signs. She was tired. She was becoming resigned, pulling back, pessimistic. And I said nothing. Worse, I sat in judgment about what was going on with her, about why she wasn't able to handle this. She surprised all of us one day and came into our team meeting and said that she was leaving. She was leaving the mental health team, going back to general probation. She announced this on a Tuesday, and she was gone by Friday. This is a 30-person caseload of a highly intensive mental health team. I connected with her in the hallway, and folks, I have goosebumps just retelling this story because I can be there in a flash. I could see the crappy carpeting. It was musty because we were working in a basement, right, community mental health. I can hear the security door clicking open and close as people are escorting their clients in. And she looked at me with tears in her eyes and said that she started dressing every single day, down to her underwear, about what she would be wearing if she was murdered at work that day. She started getting her financial paperwork in order, talking to her adult kids about what she would want for them if she was no longer here. She stopped living and was just surviving. She was suffering, and I was a witness to it. Thankfully, her supervisor noticed. Her supervisor, who, by the way, saw her maybe once a week, I saw her every single day. And her supervisor authorized the change, which is saying a lot because it meant that he had to pick up this caseload while he did all his other jobs. It took months to find a new PO. That took a huge toll on myself and my team. It took a huge toll on every single one of those clients. They were not getting the same level of probation that they needed and deserved. But most importantly, folks, she suffered unnecessarily. I keep that story near to my heart, and I share that with you all because it's a reminder of me of two things. Number one, we never know what somebody else may be carrying or walking through in this life with. Number two, as coworkers, we might be best positioned to see when our peers are not at their best. Diffusion of responsibility is someone else is going to talk to them about it, right? Their family, their friends, that mental health psychologist person. But you, as colleagues, might be the best person to notice, to witness that somebody is not their best. And this is important, folks, because I don't know about you all, but I have never seen a misconduct case that wasn't riddled with mistakes and a whole lot of health and wellness issues in the days, weeks, months, and years leading up to that event. I want to see active bystandership bring down mistakes, stop misconduct, but what I really want to see is what kind of impact does it have on the health and well-being of you all, of the people working in this industry. How do we use active bystandership to intervene on our peers to keep them from suffering? Because we need everybody in order to do this really important work. So we're challenging that see something, say something is not enough, but I also want to challenge you that intervening on our peers is nothing short of courageous. I don't want you to rat out on your peers. I want you to talk to them. I want you to understand that the duty to intervene, we hear about the duty to intervene all the time as it relates to misconduct. I'm sure most, if not all of you, have a legal obligation to intervene if you see misconduct in a peer, if not an ethical one. And I would actually love to learn. I've started to learn a lot about the legal and ethical expectation, but I'd love to learn what maybe it is in your line of work specifically. But here's something I do know. The skill behind that is active bystandership. It's a skill. And the good news is it's a skill that can be learned, but it is a perishable skill. You don't just pop into the job on day one and I know how to be an active bystander. It's actually a lot more complicated than it seems. And there's much more than diffusion responsibility and pluralistic ignorance, and the work is hard that gets in the way of that. There's a lot to that. And so I want to again encourage you to learn more about active bystandership even outside of today. As a reminder, at the end of this, there'll be a QR code. You can get a copy of all of these slides, and this slide has a hyperlink to every one of these resources. Give me a golf clap if you love to read. You love books. I love it. Thank you. Oh, I love the golf clap. All right. I got two here for you. The one is from Dr. Irvin Staub, right? We got his definition of active bystandership. He's our decades researcher on this. We've also got one from Dr. Catherine Sanderson, who's also a psychologist, and she wrote Why We Act, Turning Bystanders into Moral Rebels. Doesn't this make you just want to go pick up this book immediately, right? Let's become moral rebels. All right, how about raise your hand if you're more of a podcast person? Right? You love a good podcast. Okay, I got two for you here. In that hyperlink on the picture is me with my friend Greg Hanna, and we did a podcast on active bystandership in the California Department of Corrections. And the one above it, I did a podcast with my friend Simone Green, National Criminal Justice Association. All right, how about give me some jazz hands if you're more of a TED Talk person. Right, like you want a TED Talk, all right? Some people are like, wait, what are jazz hands first? I love it, awesome. Okay, so that picture there, that is also Dr. Catherine Sanderson, and she did a fantastic TED Talk about an experience that she had with her son going away to college. Again, great opportunities to learn about active bystandership. So folks, how about, let's do some skills. So I want you to learn more about this, but I promised you that we'd talk about why it's hard, why it's important, but also what you can do about it. I also want to remind us again that we do have some microphones. I may or may not have some positive reinforcement as a classic behaviorist psychologist for people who come up and want to be vulnerable and not fall prey to diffusion of responsibility in a session around active bystandership, because I want to practice some skills. So if you're feeling wild, feel free to step up to a microphone. We'd love to hear you practice some skills with us. So these are the 3 Ds to prevent harm, and it comes from, again, Dr. Irvin Staub, and he developed this framework to help prevent sexual assault in the military. That is no small order, right? And so with that, what he wanted to do is develop a framework that just does the least amount of effort possible to stop the harm. Remember, we're not about this panacea perfect fix. We're about stopping the harm and keeping it from happening again. And so a distract, let's start with distract, folks. The distract skill is really just that. How do we distract somebody who may or may not be intending to cause harm, but nonetheless potentially is? How do we distract them and stop that harm? I want you to imagine your very rambunctious, well-meaning, harmless client, but your rambunctious, loud client who's always making a ruckus in the lobby. Like, you don't even have an appointment with this person, and you can hear them from the end of where you're at. You come out, you go all the way down, right? You open up the lobby door, and your administrative assistant, Abigail, is about to lose her cool. This client has completely gotten underneath her skin. She is ready to lose it on this client. You don't want to patronize Abigail. Please don't patronize me. I don't love that, right? You don't want to chastise your client, but you need to create a distraction real quick here to keep this from turning into the next thing that you have to tell your supervisor about. Anybody have any thoughts about how to distract? What kind of distraction you can do? I like the thinking cap heads. Yes, I would love to hear it. Do you mind stepping up to the mic? I'm afraid I won't hear you if you don't. And I want to hear you. She says I got a big voice. Let's hear it. I can't hear you, but I can actually hear you without the mic now. I lied, so go for it.
That's going to be a distraction in itself.
Yes.
Because now both people are going to look at you coming out. And then my question would be to the defendant, hey man, what's going on?
Oh, perfect.
And he's going to start talking to me. He's going to start telling me. And I'm going to say, okay, can we bring it down just a little bit so I can understand what you're saying? And let's see what we can do to help you.
Beautiful. Thank you. What's your name?
Wanda Cunningham.
Wanda, thank you so much. Thank you, Wanda. I appreciate that. Wanda, please come up and see me afterwards. I definitely want to thank you more robustly. Yes, absolutely. It's a great distract. You got some thumbs up from your peers over here, I saw, right? So it's simple. It doesn't have to be complicated. It's one of the key things we want to know. So let's go on to our next skill, which is delegate. This is not delegating a task. That's just a distraction. This is about engaging your allies, your peers. This is an easy one, folks. Here's my question. In Carl's story, who else could have been an ally or a peer to help prevent harm? Go for it. Yeah, the cohort. Tay, Nadra, absolutely, right? They are unaware of the power that they have to stop harm. But let's take this a step further with Carl's story. Let's say you're Tay, right? You've been watching, you're concerned, you come into this copier room, you see his laptop open. What is a direct intervention that you can take that would stop the harm that we heard? Shut it down? Yep, absolutely. What else? Yes. Stay in the office and wait till he comes back and kind of have a conversation with him of like, hey man, I'm not supposed to do this? Yeah, absolutely. Direct intervention does not have to be complicated, right? And also, that hallway was filled with lots of people, right? So direct intervention does not need to be lecturing Carl. It doesn't mean to be, trying to get him in trouble. It means taking action in order to stop the harm. And the reason that this framework is so powerful, even though it sounds very simple, is remember, folks, see something, say something is not enough. We know that there's no such thing as neutral, but we falsely like to pretend, even though we're being passive. There's a lot of reasons that it's harder than it seems to intervene, whether that's diffusion of responsibility, pluralistic ignorance, or is it just that we're also running our own compassion fatigue game? So we want the interventions to be super simple, right? We want people to be able to engage without causing further harm. That's one of the key factors. So I've talked to you about podcasts, articles, we've done some social science. Thank you for, joining me in that. But I've left an intervention off the table that's really important, and that is training. Training is another really important way that we can leverage from insight to action. As a psychologist, folks, I'm regularly telling people that having insight into a problematic behavior is not enough to change our behaviors. We actually have to do something with that insight. We have to take action. And training is a fantastic way that we can move to action. We can practice those 3 skills. When I do this training, today is just a little tiny snippet of the comprehensive training that I do with agencies across the country specific to active bystandership. We get role playing. I mean, y'all are getting it off easy in comparison to the activity that I usually make people do. But let's get real about training here, folks. I find that people tell me all the time that trainings are usually not meeting the needs. Raise your hand if you've ever attended a training where it was basically a policy mandate. You had to check a box, sign it, but you left with no skills. Yeah, been there, done that. Raise their hands if you ever went to a training and you left thinking, gee, thanks. I could have read the PowerPoint slides myself. Right, I hear some laughter, okay? Folks, the thing about training, I believe strongly that you deserve better training. You have really hard work. Training shouldn't just be powerful and important and give you the skills you need to tackle hard problems. It should be also fun. The work is hard, and I actually know for a fact that when we have fun and we're engaged in training, we're more likely to do something with it. Anybody here was anybody here in the session that was right before this? A couple of people. There was something that they were saying that made me think about this, which is they were saying that we'll never be able to hire the same amount of people that we used to do the job, right? That was a key takeaway from that recruitment, the session just before mine. And I was thinking, yes, but they talked really smartly about efficiencies in workflow, hiring civilian workforce, really cool stuff. And of course, something that I thought of is, and you need active bystandership. Because when you have active bystandership in your workforce, you're leveraging the power of watching out for each other and having each other's backs in a way that doesn't have people leaving this field faster than they're coming into it. We can't afford any more mistakes or all those costly impacts of misconduct. We have to do something different. You can hear my passion for training, but you want to know what's even better than training? Culture shift. Culture shift is even better than training. And one of the things that I appreciate about when we're building a culture, so when I get the opportunity to train with organizations, we do require that everybody get trained, top down, bottom up, inside out. The leaders are not allowed to sit back and say, you go get this training, I got busy meetings to attend to. It's just not how it works, right? That does not create an active bystandership culture. But I also know that culture can begin from the bottom up, and it can begin with just you. So I want to do a quick recap here, because folks, I want to send you out of here evangelical for active bystandership. So I want you to get a couple of things super, super strong for me, okay? So you can just shout out loud, yes or no, see something, say something, enough to stop harm. No, thank you. Ooh, I like, or thumbs down, right? That'll work too. Okay, but active bystandership is something that we can learn, okay? All right, yes or no, when it comes to preventing harm, is there a place of neutral? No, I like the thumbs. You're starting a movement here. We got thumbs ups down all over here. All right, nice. Now, I want you to, I know that we're small, but let's be mighty, folks. Let's be real loud on this one. This is an open book test, like I like to tell my students. Stop stressing, it's an open book test. Okay, folks, we walked out of here, you're gonna walk out of here with 3 skills. So 3 Ds to prevent harm. We've got distract, delegate, and direct. Thank you very much, absolutely. Oh, I like the golf clap we're getting with that too. My next yes or no question, does training need to be boring? No, ooh, double thumbs downs up here. Okay, thank you so much. Not at all. In fact, high quality training can be a pathway to culture change. But folks, we also talked a lot about the health and wellness, and I wanna really flip on 2 sides of this coin. It's important to me, it is definitely important to me that every single one of you in the work that you do, that you are healthy and well. Because I believe strongly that if you are, you'll be less likely to make mistakes or get engaged in misconduct. But here's the other flip side of that we didn't talk about. I also know that when you are healthy and well, you are more likely to notice when others are not. So my story about the probation officer, folks, I realized many years later that I was completely burnt out then. I was a young mom, I was a new manager, I was completely overwhelmed. I was beyond burnt out, I was crispy. And even though I saw, I was not in a position to really understand and make a change. I needed help myself too. So we know that taking care of you not only ensures that you'll stay on that healthy trajectory, but you're gonna be more likely to notice when a colleague needs help. And remember, we don't want you to rat out on your peers, I want you to talk to them. And if you're thinking about somebody who you think is not doing well, gather your resources, your agency resources, your state and local resources. 988 is the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. If you're not sure what resources, come and find me after. I will brainstorm with you. But gather your resources and go and talk to them and let them know that you're worried. You could be the difference that saves a life, and we need everybody to do this work. So this is that QR code. If you'd like a copy of the slides, you can just snap that. It'll drop you into a form. I just need your email address so I know where to send it to. You can ask me other questions in there if you're interested in learning. But I want to leave you with one more super secret tip when it comes to active bystandership. And that is that it starts with a culture of permission. We said that see something, say something is not enough. You now know that there's no such thing as neutral. We talked about how I don't want you to rat out on your peers, I want you to talk with them. But here's another assumption you might be operating with that is dangerous. You may falsely believe that if you're making a mistake, if you're stepping into something that you can't get out of, you may falsely believe that your peers are going to intervene on you. But you now know that it's easier said than done. Don't make that assumption, it's dangerous. Creating a new culture begins with you. I challenge you today to find somebody that you work with or make a plan if you didn't come here with a posse. Make a plan and go back and have a conversation with somebody to say, hey, be a little uncomfortable, be a little awkward, that's where we have our best growth, and say to them, if I'm making a mistake, if I'm messing up, if it looks like I'm engaging in anything that looks like misconduct, if you don't think I'm healthy and well, please talk to me. And then what a great opportunity to tell them how you'd like to receive that information, right? Because a healthy culture begins with you. You all worked hard today. I mean, I made you work probably a lot harder than you thought you were. We were doing jazz hands, we did social science experiments together, we had people participate. So you worked hard, you deserve some credit, folks. I would encourage you to get your CEUs. So this is this conferences, you can scan to receive continuing education units, get some credit, you worked really hard. There's also an opportunity to provide feedback from me about this presentation, as well as feedback for the conference in general. And I understand that this code is posted elsewhere, but I wanted to make sure it was made relevant and ready for you all. And so lastly, folks, I just want to say thank you. I want to say thank you to my friend Mike. Thank you to Kylie in the back for helping me, and thank you to all of you for showing up and learning something about that I'm really passionate about. I'll be up here if you have any questions, and if not, I wish you all the health and happiness. Take care, folks.